Hi everyone! So in this video, we're going to be talking about ISO. Let's get to it. So ISO is how sensitive the sensor or film in your camera is to light. So just a quick note that with older cameras and meters, it is sometimes called ASA. So just FYI, if you happen to pick up an old camera and you're like, there's no ISO, yeah, it's ASA instead. So anyways, a small number like ISO 100 means that the film or the sensor is less sensitive to light and there's going to be less noise and grain. So what do I mean by noise and grain? Let me show you real quick. Let's take a look at a couple photos and I'll come back to that. So let's take a look at this photo. Now you see up, well, this one works too. You see in this dark area where we have all of these like specks and stuff? That is, in this case, this was taken on film. So this is grain. Now, with it, when we're talking about digitally, we call this noise, just because it's a slightly different process on how it's created, but it still pretty much looks the same. These extra little specks. Whereas if they had been able to use a low ISO like 100, we would have just a nice black area back there instead of these little specks and such. So, oops, move this down here. All right. So that is what noise and grain is. There we go. So like I said, a smaller number will give you less noise and grain, but it's going to take more light to create an image. And what I mean by more light, you're going to have to either open up that aperture larger or have a longer shutter speed to let enough light in to create a good image. Whereas a larger number like ISO 1600 means it is more sensitive to light, so you need less light to create an image, but the drawback is that you get more of that noise and grain. So you kind of got to do a balancing act and decide what is more important to you when you're taking the photos in low light. So yeah, most of the time people use the lowest ISO possible to avoid noise and grain at any cost. But a high ISO is usually necessary in low light situations. It kind of depends on what type of situation we're talking about. For a night scene where everything is still, then you can use a longer shutter speed instead to get enough light in there. But if you're trying to capture action while there's low light, then that's when you usually need to go with the high ISO. I'm going to get more into this next week when we go into metering, but just keep this stuff in mind. So, yes, a high ISO is usually necessary in low light situations, and because of this, a high grain look is commonly associated with photos of musicians. Since a high ISO film was pretty much always used to photograph concerts before digital, and even now, I guess, they still use a high ISO, but digital cameras have gotten better with noise, and I think stage lighting is taken more into account nowadays when it comes to live performances. So it's not as obvious when there's high ISO used for photos of musicians now with digital cameras. But back before digital, when it was just film, you basically had to be using a high ISO film to get any type of image in a concert setting. So now some people actually choose a high ISO for the aesthetic. They like how it looks. I've noticed especially that it works well for like grungy, urban, city type subjects and stuff. So yeah, you'll probably start noticing that now that I mentioned it. And although high ISOs are generally avoided, like I said, it's starting to come into fashion. So there are now filters. I've seen them on apps where you can add noise, you can add light leaks, which is another, another effect that happened when you use film, but now that's become popular too. So my point is, at one point it was just like a necessity, but now it's also a creative choice. It's pretty cool. All right. So again, a couple of images here. So this is Cat Anderson, a musician, and you notice that he's playing the trumpet, and we have these streaks happening here. So do a quick quiz with yourself. What is causing these streaks? Think back to our other lectures. What would cause this type of streaking to happen? If you said a long or a slow shutter speed, you are absolutely correct. We have a slow shutter speed, so we're seeing the path of movement that the trumpet took. Pretty cool. And I personally love adding this type of element to photographs when I'm photographing musicians, especially. I mean, it could be for all kinds of subjects, but I don't know. I think it adds more of the energy of the music or the musician when you use these slower shutter speeds to capture stuff like this. Alright, and here we have David Bowie. We have all of this grain and noise back here. And that's just what was necessary. And, oh, Ella Fitzgerald. I blinked for a second. And we have Ella Fitzgerald here. And you can see not just the noise back here, but, the shadow areas right over here. We can see those little dots and specks. I have a feeling that this was actually enlarged as well, so those specks are even larger than on the original negative. But yeah, really cool look. So here is an image that I took of our library, and I took it with different ISOs so you can kind of see the changes. And I encourage you to actually right click and save this image so you can zoom in on it and look at it, because I know that over here you really can't see the differences nearly as much until you get to about right here, which is my ISO 3200. So here we have ISO 100. You can see the sky is just a pretty nice look, no big deal. But as we move over, you can see how different the sensitivity of the ISO starts to look and how it's affecting our image. So I'm trying to remember. I think I took this with my Nikon. And it's kind of an old Nikon now. I've had it for, almost 10 years now. Has it been that long? I don't know. But, they have gotten a little bit better, but that's going to be one of the things that you're going to notice that it gets mentioned in like camera reviews when you start looking for a new camera or whatever, is what's it look like when it's at a high ISO. And if you're going to be taking photographs of subjects that are in low light conditions, this is an important consideration to make. Do you spend the extra bucks so that your images look better at high ISO or not? Okay, so, and I know because it is kind of hard to see on here and on the screen, I also spliced it up. So this is a look from this upper corner right here. So, because I took a full image at each ISO, so then I took that corner where there was just sky and just kind of put it together here so we could see it visually a little bit better. So not only are we seeing more specs, so I'll move myself up here. So we have ISO 100, 1600, 3200, and 25,600. That's the extreme on that camera. Not only are we seeing more specs, but there's also a color change starting to happen. So yeah, another important consideration. The black and white photos are black and white, so we couldn't see those color changes, but with the digital ones we can. And there's actually some sliders in Lightroom that we're going to end up looking at that can help minimize this kind of stuff and help take out extra color artifacts. Alright, and last but not least, I did include a link here to explore rockarchive.com. It's a really fun website to look at, especially for those of you who might want to go into concert photography, just to kind of see the roots of different concerts, different musicians, different, and it's not just at concerts. They have portraiture here too of some really classic musicians. So yeah, just thought I'd share this fun website. I love browsing through it once in a while just to see what's going on. Oh, they even have album covers. Oh, and a contact sheet collection. Okay, anyways, I'll let you guys explore this on your own. It is available here on my lecture.